meeting to Dr. Radhakanta sir. Thanks everyone. Stay tuned. So sir,
Thank you, Balveer.
yeah, welcome sir.
Thank you for your introduction.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
my pleasure
it's,
sir.
it's a pleasure for me to be with you in this platform and share my experiences, more
Thanks for your
particularly.
appreciations. Yes.
So, should I start, or there is something you?
Yes sir, you can continue now.
Okay. So, I'm sharing my screen. So, my screen is visible to all.
Yes sir, it is visible.
Yes, sir.
So, good evening, everybody. There was some initial inconvenience for you due to the working day, working Saturday, and I know that you all are tired for the day-long class. However, my lectures are very simple for the students of mining engineering. Those have some aspiration that they will do something in the numerical modeling. So, to address this particular issue, I have chosen my topic in this particular heading. Why do we need numerical modeling in mining engineering? Uh, on set of this particular occasion, I am uh, remembering one day, a scenario. You have probably remembering me that I did my PhD from IIT Kharagpur. When I was introduced in the day one in my lab, there was some lab assistant, Mr. Sujit Bharti, if I'm not wrong. Sujit Bharti. He at that time working as a laboratory superintendent in IIT Kharagpur. He actually told us how to install the software ANSYS. At that time we are working, how to install that, how to import the license file, how to start with the ABCD of the numerical modeling. So I am very much thankful to that laboratory superintendent, Mr. Sujit Bharti, because I have learned something from him. So I thanking him in this occasion because we are learning from everybody. So after this introduction, I felt that I should mention before you that as a student, you should learn from everybody. Okay. Now, why numerical modeling is required in this particular respect? We must have to learn or we have to know the importance of elasticity. Okay. All the numerical modeling, okay, all the numerical modeling, a crux of that problem lies on the consideration of the elastic law. Okay. And this elastic law is working in the nature since its starting point, okay, if it is at all. And this is first time been observed in the 16th century, 16th or 17th century. Now I have tried to show you that with the example of spring. So with the initial one, the first one, if you notice, it is in a static state. Now I am extending it to a length of x. Okay. So how much amount of force is required? X. Okay. In a negative direction, it is minus. Now, how much is force required to extend it to a 2x? Is a double. So this particular example was nicely shown by Mr. Hook, who did a lot of work in the biology also. But apart from that, he also worked on materials behavior. He is basically contemporary of Isaac Newton, and he also working at that time in the University of Cambridge or like that, I forgot. But the importance is he has nicely shown us the relation between stress and strain with a famous diagram we used to use every day in our rock and soil mechanics lab. Stress versus strain. This is a graph is going on, and up to some point it will goes on increasing. And not only that, in that curve there is some amount of linearity, there is some amount of curve, and then finally it is reaching to yield stage. Okay. After that, it is trying to reduce like this. So this famous curve is better that I should use my pen screen. So this is my pen screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is the stress. This is the strain. This is a very famous curve. Okay. Now people are telling that up to this portion, material is increasing. The stress is taken with an increasing capacity, and there is a gradient. Okay, and there is a curve nature, and finally it is reached to yield point. This is the yield point. Okay. Now the interesting thing is of this particular graph that every mechanical object material is on an average show or exhibit this kind of characteristics under a external loading condition. So this is now known to all the engineers and to the scientists. Any material I am applying a stress, it will exhibit this kind of characteristics. And after some point of time, you see after yielding point, I have mentioned this is a dedicated dotted line. This dotted line represents a failure. A failure. So this failure means the material will not revert back to its original position once the load is removed. Okay. The material will not revert back to its original position once the load is removed. Not only that, due to this failure, you know, when there is a failure, there are a lot of energies exhibiting, it has been released and so on and so forth. So that consideration we are not going to consider now. So as an engineer, I know this much amount of load can be taken by a material. So if I design a structure, any kind of structure, maybe a bridge, maybe an embankment, maybe a slope, maybe a underground opening, or maybe the pillar. Okay. Whatever we design in a mining or any geotechnical field, engineers have to respect this particular characteristic curve of that particular material of which we are preparing or building that kind of structure. So now one guideline is there to the engineer. Yes, if I remain within this range, within this range, there is a less susceptibility that my structure will collapse. there is a least susceptibility that the my structure will collapse. So, considering this and respecting this particular curve, engineers always try to design all structure considering the elasticity. So, my original discussion was the elasticity. So, elasticity is a very important part and parcel for our engineering consideration. Now, secondly, one more observation. Okay. One more observation is when you are stretching a spring. Okay. When you are stretching a spring, it is also a material. That material have elasticity. Okay. When we are stretching a spring, it basically store a potential energy. It basically store a potential energy. And there are lot of physics equation, you know. You all already have cracked the joint entrance examination and there are a lot of equations, you know that. So I am not going into that details. But the observation is, now material is deforming. The spring is being expanded. Expanded means it is deformed. When it is deformed, it is, we call in engineering term, called strain. Okay. Now, due to the strain, another thing we are now notice that it is storing a elastic potential energy. Now, if this energy is very high, means a huge amount of strain occurs, then the dotted line I have shown you also will manifest, means it will break. So, any underground structure, suppose a pillar breaks, okay, it basically means what? It basically means to us that it is trying to store the potential energy, strain energy basically, storing. But after some point of time, after reaching the yield point, it breaks down. So now this elasticity now all coupled together with another term, potential energy, that will help us to understand in a greater detail how the system is thermodynamically balanced. How the system is thermodynamically balanced. So the elastic law is within the ambit of the thermodynamic law. So it is not outside the ambit of thermodynamic equation. So this is, I hope, it is understood by everyone. So this is what I have already given the introduction, that Hooks is the scientist who discovered this particular law, and he noticed a very important thing, that this deformation is directly related to load and external load, okay, and there is a small deformation and that is within elastic limit. And also he noticed that it will return to the original shape once the load is removed. So this is a very fundamental contribution in the treasure house of the engineering. All the engineering structure foundation lies on this particular principle. We are always using this principle everywhere, and Hooks also tried to manipulate, manifest.
Hello, sir. Okay. Please stay in the meeting. Sir will join in a minute or two.
Hello, Sumit. So, how much I have profit? Potential energy. Okay.
Application of elasticity, sir.
Application of elasticity. Okay. So time to time, please reminding me if I am disconnected, because you know nowadays there is a problem in the institute network. Okay. So okay. This screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what we are now reached now is to do mining. In mining, we are doing lot of operations that I will come to next slide. But in principle, our engagements are with the rock. Our engagements are with the rock. We are cutting, we are doing some structure, we are making some structure, we are carrying those materials, and these are so many things. And this rock is basically not homogeneous. Okay, not homogeneous. And we also notice that whatever the homogeneity or inhomogeneity or isotropy of this rock also exhibits elastic property up to a certain limit. These rocks also exhibit elastic property up to certain limit. And based on that, you know, from the engineering geology, we subdivide rock into ductile rock, brittle rock, like that. So many things. You will learn in a greater details when you will take the course of rock mechanics. So the rock is also a deformable object. Rock is also an object that obeys the Hooke's law. Rock is also an object that will exhibit the potential energy during the deformation. So if the rock is taking load, it means that some amount of potential energy is stored. Some amount of potential energy is stored. It will burst out once it will reach the yield point. So rock is also a type of material that can also be considered as engineering material within the ambit of elasticity. It is now understood. So all these mining methods are composed of drilling, blasting, mechanical excavation, transportation of rock, and what I have told you, it is basically less than what actually done in the field. So there are a lot of things that I am not speaking to you. There are a lot of things. Only these are the things I mentioned, but there are a lot of things as a mining engineers we have to do. So the untold things, unspoken things are lost. But within this ambit, suppose some of you will really join in a blasting company in the coming days. How the assessment or the performance of the blast explosive is being assessed. Okay. Nowadays, throughout the globe, this is done with a very, very well developed, sophisticated software, and based on that performance, people are marketing which kind of explosives should be used in this kind of situation. If it is a situation in very moisture, if there are a lot of cracks, if there are sensitive structures, so many things. So nowadays, all the operations before doing in the mining, actual mining, people are widely using the numerical method to simulate before actually doing in the field. Even in the mechanical excavator also, how the mechanical excavator to be designed, what kind of mechanical excavator to be taken out to excavate this kind of materials, we actually simulate first. And to simulate that, you need some kind of approximation technique. And that approximation technique also is basically one kind of approximation technique we are using, that is numerical method. So there are so many things. Now, straight coming to our original discussion. We have started that rock is deformable. You see, it's a very nice picture. It is taken from a geological site of University of London. In their geological department, I have downloaded this picture. This picture is a very typical picture. You see, there are different kind of folds is observed, and different kind of lineage is also observed. There are stratification of the deposit. Okay, and in between two layers, there are a distinct discontinuity we observe. Okay. Now, considering this a typical problem, can only a simple analytical solution will suffice to estimate the, suppose I want to estimate the principal stress along the fault plane, along the, suppose this is the thick bedded deposit. If I want to measure the how much amount of principal stress was actually played when it is formed, if I want to determine that. Geologists basically do this kind of exercise for structural mapping, and how much amount of major principal stress and minor principal stress actually played and evolved at that time, and that is why this shape is like this. So people are basically earlier doing using a analytical method, and that analytical methods are not very accurate. Okay. Nowadays, for example, I will mention one paper. We have tried to do it in my postdoc period with the geology department of IIT Kharagpur. We are trying to simulate. You know, gold deposits are always on the surface in most of the cases. It is in the raw form we get the gold, And we are trying to develop a numerical method that how much amount of stress and strain actually develop at that particular crustal surface so that this kind of deposit is been out. So there are interesting numerical work is going on throughout the globe on this mineralization, how this mineralization has been mineralization been formed by following the numerical method. Okay, so this is the beauty nowadays. In a wide field scenario, geology is a very infinite subject in that sense, because if you start from the rock stuff this end to the that end, you cannot reach to the molten stage, and in between there are a lot of complexity. You cannot map everything. So there are so many parameters that is not been scaled. There are so many parameters that is not been measured. There are so many things that cannot be considered in a general solution. But in numerical solution, we can consider all those things. Now, due to this rock deformation, there is a very important development is basically the fluid pressure. Okay, and that fluid pressure is basically is influence the permeability of the material. And this permeability is a very important parameter for a rock engineer, particularly those who are working in the underground mining for draining out the water, how much amount of water is coming. Even for the open pit mining also, permeability is a very important parameter, we have to measure it. And fluid pressure is a very dangerous thing, because in an underground mine, you do not know the source, exact source, water table source. So suddenly, if you just trigger some amount of blast in that particular situation, there will be inundation, and that problem we know that in our experiences in the earlier time. So these are the complex things, but the rock deformation, how it is played through the fluid pressure, to the permeability, all are interrelated. All are interrelated. Now, coming to a solution, okay, all mining engineers, when starting to read the rock mechanics, they are exposed to this equation. What these equations mean? These equations tells us that if I am driving a underground tunnel, or in an engineering sense, I am telling a circular opening in underground. Okay, and I am assuming that in and around my rock is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay, in and around my rock is homogeneous and isotropic, and it is evenly layered. Okay, for that consideration, sigma r, sigma f, and tau rf can be manipulated using this formula very well. There is no question about that. There is no question about the authenticity and accuracy of this equation. It is very a very good answer to the fitting problem. Now, you cannot drive considering homogeneity in and around your environment a tunnel. You cannot. Suppose, for example, 2 years back, maybe in the 2019, I visited the underground tunnel of, you probably know there is an underground tunnel is going on between Howrah Maidan to Esplanade, okay, in Calcutta. And that tunnel is went below the river Ganga. Okay, that tunnel is been driven below the Ganga, and people are so much afraid that when the tunnel will move through the Ganga, there will be lot of problem like that. But when I was talking with the engineer, when I reach in the underground at the Esplanade level, when I am talking with them, that at which portion you people have faced lot of problems. My original assumption was that during the drivage at the just below the Ganga river, there was a difficult scenario. But engineers have given me a very nice answer. That you know that in the river bed, the sedimentation, all these things is known to us. Okay, so there is the engineering approximation we can do. But on the surface, when just we are crossing the river bed of Ganga, now going to the writers building, then there is a building Raj Bhavan, then Esplanade. In between there are a lot of kind of buildings, old buildings, and the structure density we are not aware of that. So that basically creates an inhomogeneity, and in that particular situation, maintaining the tunnel was the most difficult one. And for that, a simple analytical solution was not sufficient. We have to go for an in-depth numerical modeling, and to that numerical modeling we are following systematically, and their server was in the Germany. Okay, that machine server was in Germany. It is operated below the Ganga river. So much accuracy they have achieved following the numerical simulation for a very inhomogeneous, complex, heterogeneous formation. And you know, in the basin of the Ganga, there are so much problem of the water, and they have solved it and following the numerical method. So my point of intention is that mere following this analytical solution will not be sufficient for a complex mining problem that we often exposed to in different engineering applications in our different fields. People are also tried with this fringe method. Okay, this is a homogeneous sheet, perfect kind of sheet. Earlier there was no perfect sheet. It is a homogeneous transparent sheet, and people have tried to give a load from both the directions. Okay, and we are passing a light. Okay, we are passing a light and try to take a X-ray of that particular situation. How much the intensity of the different stress it is developed in and around the underground tunnel. Okay, it is not an underground tunnel actually. It is a sheet. On the both sides, I am giving a load, and how much the fringes are being formed. This has been nicely been shown. This is also a meaningful for a homogeneous formation, but our problems are not homogeneous. So that is why only because of this we are trying to finding out a alternative solution. We are trying to find out the alternative solution, and that is been started in the 1960s. Okay, means already the numerical methods are 70 years old, more or less, and more than that, because finite difference method was proposed originally more than 200 years ago. Particularly the FEM, it is basically started in the 1960s, and that FDM that we will just try to initiate the discussion. It was originally been proposed for solving complex partial differential order of equations. Okay, and later on it has been used in a geomechanical field, and there are a lot of softwares are associated with that. Okay. So now coming to a classical rock mechanics problem. A classical rock mechanics problem been formulated by Jing, most probably Jing, Professor Jing, in his nice paper in the International Journal of Rock Mechanics in the year 1999. He published this work, and there he tried to show us that for a rock mechanics objective there are method A, method B, method C, and method D. Okay, available with us. Okay, and all these methods involve site investigation. All these methods involve some amount of mapping. Okay, all this after following these methods, we have to do some design. Okay, and that design based on forward analysis as well as back analysis, and finally we have to construct the structure, any structure that we are dealing with. So he proposed these 4 methods are interrelated to each other, but method 1 occupies a one column, method B occupies another column, and method C another column, and so on and so forth. You see, from the method A, it's basically based on the previous experience. You know that experience is a very important matter, and that is why in the field, experienced engineers have a lot of value. Experienced engineers have a lot of value. So following A, using the pre-existing standard, okay, there are different standard classifications, you know, there are different thumbs rules, you know that. There are different thumbs rules is in use in the mining, okay. There are maybe some case studies, already some case studies based on that you are working. But it is good to some extent. But it may not be in ditto will be replicable in another site due to inhomogeneity, anisotropy, complexity, heterogeneity, so on. So method A is gone. It is no more useful. What is the method B? Method B based on a simplified model. Okay. So simplified models is, you know, the RMS, rock mass classification, you know the Q system, you know the geological strength index, and you know, I have already shown you the analytical method. Okay. Analytical methods can be useful when the medium is not very big, and if it is big, it should be equal all around. So homogeneity should be maintained. For a rock mass classification, Q, GSI system are in use for many years. If I say in the 1980s, 1990s, that was the golden period of this classification technique. Many people have tried to develop this classification, that classification, and they are using. But nowadays, it is no more value for the engineers, those who are dealing with a very sensitive structure. Because, you know, these classifications are based on some approximation technique, and some of the things they have not considered, and that was not possible within the ambit of those classification systems that was developed in the 1980s. Okay. So method B gone. What is the method C? Method C, designed based on modeling, which attempts to capture the most relevant mechanism. It is good. It is good. So we are trying to now initiate a modeling technique, numerical modeling technique, that is FEM, BM, DM, hybrid, like that. Okay. And based on that, we are now approaching our model. So in some cases, the medium is medium is continuous, there is no discontinuity. So FEM or FDM can easily handle those kinds of situations. Okay, it's good. Suppose the medium is very weathered, the medium is cracked, there are a lot of fractures, so we have to go for DEM model. So that basically will consider, and based on that we can proceed, we can follow the route. That is good. The fourth is all-encompassing modeling, means along with the hybrid, we have to consider lot of things. Suppose the coupling, suppose there is a rainwater, there is a dynamic load, there are some cyclic kind of load, so many things. Okay, there may be, you know, in the latest time, there are IoT kind of, you know, sensors have been there. Okay, there are a lot of sensors that is working on a real time. So if a solution is achieved by us following adopting this latest sensor, their interconnection, and by that installation of those sensors, we are getting lot of data from the site, and based on that I am mapping the field, and based on that I am trying to model the behavior of that particular site on a real time. that would be very, very attractive to the engineer. That would very attractive to the engineers. In that sense, it basically encompasses everything, because you are collecting data on a real time, you are simulating the model in a real time, and coming out a predicted result, what should be the next, and you are with the next, you are already getting the data and you are matching, you are now comparing how much it is matching. If it is not matching in a quite right way, you will revert back to the original modeling, and you will fine tune your parameters so that your prediction and coming out of the result will match in exact nature. So in that way, model D is a very good one, and that will remain good one in the coming days also. Okay. So I am very much thankful to Professor Jing, who proposed the method D is basically the all-encompassing. He was right in that assessment, because at that time there was no IoT development, there was no development that real-time monitoring is possible, but he predicted well with his knowledge of the rock mechanics. So our approach would be in any engineering structure, method C is good and method D would be better. Okay, method D would be better. Okay. So now if I summarize my discussion, why we need numerical model or numerical method. So I am trying to summarize few parameters, and few parameters I will speak in my own words. One is the limitations of the analytical solution. So analytical solutions have a limit. Analytical solutions have a golden age in the 200 years back. Okay, it's good, but now analytical solutions will not be able to give a good solution for our engineering problem. So it's gone. So this is one point we are now approaching a direction to the numerical modeling point. Better modeling. In the numerical models, we are basically getting an approximate solution. And that approximate solution we have revisited, tested, verified too many times, that actually matching with the real world scenario. So exact solution, it is not necessary. Exact solution is given by the analytical solution, but this approximation solution is very good, workable. Not only that, in all these manufacturing industry, car manufacturing industry, they are heavily relying on this particular modeling because of this approximation solution. Flexibility, okay. Flexibility in the sense, okay, flexibility in the sense that you can consider wide number of parameters. Nowadays, you know that in your mobile, you will get a hourly alert that in the Dhanbad, in half an hour time or 2 hours time, you are going to receive a rain. You are not expecting. You are not expecting the rainfall will come, rain will come. But suddenly you saw an alert in your mobile weather app, and you observe that within 2 hours there is a rainfall. How it is? Because nowadays in this atmospheric science, people have used a few thousand number of parameters and they are doing modeling. Few thousand number of parameters they are now comprising of, and based on that they are giving a very accurate solution. Okay, and that is basically the flexibility. You can consider a lot of parameters within the ambit of the numerical model, provided you have a computational facility. Earlier it was not feasible. In the 1980s it was not feasible, a robust solution, because at that time the computer was not at that stage. Complications. Okay, these complications is basically for a complex situation when you are trying to solve that analytical problem, you will stop some point of time and will come out erratic results. So many problems. So the next is, in this 21st century, even our laptop is so good. We can think of modeling with few thousand number of grids, and that is to be calculated within a few minutes time. So that laptop is so much capable of that. Not only that, nowadays a GPU, graphical processing unit, a computational technique has come out that, and using that within a laptop, you can a few lakhs of nodes can be computed within a very short period of time. So basically, these are the limiting factors that actually obsolete the analytical solution, and the advent of computers, advent of those softwares, toolbox, open source as well as commercial versions of those toolbox actually give an edge to the advent of this numerical modeling, and people are using. But there are big parts that I will now introduce before going to the continuum based model. Remember that people are nowadays often think, okay, I am with the numerical model, so give us a problem, I will give a solution. Okay. But what have been found out? Because these are the computer's blind box, anything input you give, if there is no error, some output will come. You give some input, some output will come. Whether that output is reasonably within the limit, whether that output is approximate to the real time or real environment, you don't know. Until and unless you know that your solution is quite matching with the real one, and for that you need to learn a lot about the theory, about the basics. So I am basically, it is my request to everybody that when you are, because nowadays you all have the laptop, all have the computer, and somehow you have managed to get some software toolbox in your position. But that is not all. That is not all. You have to learn on which theory these numerical models work. And based on that, you are modeling something. And what should be the outcome of that model beforehand, you should know. And if you know that, only after evaluating your model output, you can be pretty sure that your model is correct. Your model is correct. So that knowledge is necessary, and that is very much lacking in the present generation. That is a big problem we are facing with the students. So my first warning, not warning, you can say it's a request, that whatever you want to do in a numerical model, whatever toolbox you want to use, please try to go through the basic theory of that box. Another problem here, I have not mentioned it, that in the numerical models, okay, I will come up with this modeling techniques here, I will mention that. Now we have two kind of solution of the numerical model. One model consider that the material, the object, the things we are considered, it is a continuum. There is no discontinuity. And we have a good amount of development in this particular field. Finite difference is a very old one, more than 200 years. This mathematical formulation is already been developed. Finite element is been developed in the 1960s, I have already told. And the boundary element, it is basically the obsolete method, because nowadays no one is using this method, because due to the limitation of this particular method to appreciate the complexity in a raw. So now, before coming into that details of the finite difference method, what I was trying to speak to you, in any numerical model, all kind of numerical models, few things are very, very rudimentary and you need to know very well. One is the boundary condition. Boundary condition means, suppose I am sitting here with a chair, and in front of my computer. So myself, Radhakanta Konar is an object, suppose, and I have some mass, okay, I have some mass, and with that mass, it is been made of a biological cell. It is made of a biological cell, and there are lot of bones within my body. Okay. Suppose somebody wants to do a numerical modeling that I am giving a thrust force to Radhakanta Konar. So how much amount of deformation will be on the object Radhakanta Konar? What you have to consider? You have to consider I am sitting in the chair. I am sitting in the chair means that I cannot go below this chair because chair is an elastic body, chair is very hard. With that kind of thrust, chair is not going to dislodge. So chair will remain in its place. So I am sitting here, and this particular sitting portion of the chair is basically bounded my deformation in the bottom direction. So my deformation on the bottom direction is fixed. Similarly, in the back, my shoulder, up to the shoulder, my back is being protected by this guard of this chair in the back. So X displacement of my body in that particular direction is also blocked. Okay. So even in my feet is also on the floor of the room. So my feet will not also move in the X direction. Even my feet will not also move in the Y direction. Okay, because it is fixed. So if there is some amount of thrust force, so I will be shivering in this left side or right side like that. So this portion is degree of freedom for me because there is no boundary condition. So this way, assessing a structure and the structure in which situation this structure lies, that you have to physically assess very well, and by that your boundary conditions should be very, very accurate to the real time scenario. That is one. Another thing, there are a lot of things that we are missing in a solution. To get that solution, you need to explore a lot of data for the rock mass. Okay. So that part I will try to come up in this particular lecture. Now in this FDM, what we do? We are repetitively solving the partial differential equation. We are repetitively solving the partial differential equation. So there is equation. E is equal to mf. It is an equation. So if a particle been given a f acceleration, how much amount of force is equal to p, because the mass of that object is m. So if I apply p amount of force on this body, f acceleration will start, so it will goes on rolling on the floor. Suppose. Okay. And now I have to consider the friction within the floor with the ball. It will roll. So after some point of time, it will stop because there is a friction is working. So here there is a function. Of that function, I can differentiate, I can subdivide that part into very small zone during the traverse of that particular ball on this floor. Okay. So this can be represented by like this. So suppose a profile is there and you know the function of that particular the object you are considering. Okay. So that function is distributed on a finite profile. Now we are trying to discretize that function profile on a path into a finite number of mesh, finite number of grid. So we are trying to solve on the x0 point, we are trying to solve at x1 point, what we are trying to solve at x2 point, and so on, like that. Suppose you may have a question that it may not be so smooth a curve, may not be right, it's correct. It may not be this kind of curve. Maybe after x1 there are some another function possible. So that many complexity can be inculcated, can be included in this function, because if I am able to discretize the method, my half work is done. Rest of the things you have to compute the finite partial differential equation based on. There are many methods: explicit method, implicit method, Crank-Nicolson method. There are so many methods. Okay, and basically one is approaching with the forward computational, that is at the tn time. One is backward tn plus 1 time, but all are on the central difference, because you know, when we are learning in the 11-12 in our plus 2 level, how the differentiation is coming from the limit. There is a nice expression, hfx minus hx divided by hx, like that. There is a limit, h tends to 0, like that. So that central difference expression will be useful everywhere in this finite difference scheme. So whatever the FLAC software is basically doing is basically repetitively computing this following the partial differential equation. But these solutions are localized. Okay. So due to this localization, one advantage is there, that you are not computing everything at one go. Locally you are computing, so small. So there is no big memory required. So computationally, FLAC software is very efficient, because FLAC is working on this. Okay. But there are problems with the interpolation of the near approximation of the problem, because if there is some crack, so there is a continuity break. Okay, if there is some amount of inhomogeneity within that particular continuity, there is a break. Okay, that particular thing within this regular grid, you cannot consider with this kind of computational capability. Okay. That is why, suppose for a large strain, homogeneous formation, large strain, foundation strain, FDM will work very good. But if there are a lot of stratified deposits and there are some deformation, so that stratified deposit and large deformation, it will be very difficult for the FLAC to do that. Okay, because computationally it will be very difficult. And not only that, FLAC or all open source finite difference methods have a limitation to consider the material heterogeneity in general. Okay. So for a large deformation, normal structure in a mining, FLAC is very good and computationally it is very efficient. But for a large heterogeneous structure composed of fractures, complex boundary conditions, it is very difficult to solve following finite difference method. So what is the solution? Solution is basically we have to find out in finite element method. It is one of the most robust numerical methods developed in this age. Okay, because there are a lot of problems being faced with this FEM, but FEM has come out with a solution within few years, and next like that. And nowadays, considering the crack, discontinuity, there are XFEM, okay, there are AEM, applied element method, and those are the applied element method basically consider both finite elements as well as the distinct element that we just discussed now. So there are a lot of development been already done. ANSYS, Abaqus, these are the two software widely used in the geomechanical field, as well as there is a software called Sigma. It is under the GeoSlope. GeoSlope, there is a company. There are a lot of packages. Those packages are working on the principle of the finite element method. Now, in this kind of method, finite element method, what we do, basically what we do, it is not been mentioned, but I will tell you. Here, instead of this local state solution, localized solution, it has basically comes with a large stiffness matrix. So for storing that large stiffness matrix, so you need a very good computational power. Okay, you need a very good computational power to store that stiffness matrix. Once the stiffness matrix is developed, your half work is done. Okay, you can incorporate so many things and your solution is done. That K earlier, okay, in the spring example, you remember that was a constant, spring constant. Our stiffness matrix is a kind of that matrix, okay, K matrix. We are trying to develop, trying to come out with a solution, with a repeated solution in this APM. And that is basically the strongest point of the finite element method. But there are a lot of problems. Suppose this is a particular figure in the shaded zone. I need a very precise and accurate result, and this is very sensitive one. Okay. So different kind of meshing is also possible. Different kind of meshing is also possible to get a very good solution at the sensitive age. To get a very good solution at the sensitive age, and in that respect, APM is doing very well. People have come out or shown that for a heterogeneous structure, large complex structure, generating the mesh is a huge task. Okay, because there are a lot of error being shown by different software. So later stage, at maybe in the 2010, okay, onward, there are development of meshless methods. Okay, there are development of meshless method, and that also nowadays are very much in use. Okay, for sensitive structure. So APM basically approaching in a very robust way to consider all the complexity that we are now facing, to model a real geotechnical structure or any structure matter that is being useful in day-to-day life. So in that sense, I can rate the APM as a number one numerical method for dealing with any solid object. Remember, I have mentioned the solid object. Okay. Because in my lecture today, I have not considered gaseous material or a fluid material and their modeling for the engineering problem. We are only considering solid body, rigid body, elastic body. Okay. So these meshless methods nowadays are in use throughout the globe, and people have coming out a solution to deal with this complex problem of generating a mesh, okay, for a large structure, 3D structure. So I think the advancement will be more in the coming days, and there are a lot of things are going on, and you can use it. ANSYS and Abaqus, a very potential candidate in this particular domain for the considering the geomechanical behavior of rock, soil, foundation, and interaction of the water with the soil, interaction of the pore water pressure of the rock, and the crack, discontinuity, joint, fold like that. So this is a very good in that. I will not discuss in detail, or I will not give much time on the boundary element method, because nowadays it is outdated. Earlier it was used only for the mining, excavation, pillar design like that, and it is no more in use. So we will not discuss. Now, apart from finite element method, one of the strongest candidates that will, I think, it will sustain in a long run in the rock mechanics, that is basically the distinct element method or district element method. In the 1990s, okay, only it is 30 years old. In the 1990s, the journey of DM starts with the Peter Kandal model. Peter Kandal, he was a rock mechanics engineer. He proposed this method, and from that, there are a lot of companies nowadays dealing with this kind of computational technique, and there are a lot of toolbox has already come out, and people are using. Principal focus of this numerical modeling is, suppose there is a sand pile. Okay, there is a sand pile, a stack of sand. Okay. Now with a ball pen, you are now monitoring a sand pile. With a ball pen, the needle of the ball pen is a very fine one. Now touch a sand particle. Okay, touch a sand particle, or you just push some amount of tipping kind of force you are applied on a ball, on a sand particle. What you will observe? You will observe that sand particle is rolling. Sand particle is rolling on the sand profile, and it is been interacted with another sand particle, and maybe that sand particle is stopped. Another sand particle started rolling. Another sand, that the second particle also touching the next sand particle, it stops. The third sand particle is rolling, and so on, so and so and so forth. What is the summary? Summary is, all blocks, particles are independent to each other, are on assembled, and that basically principally governed by interaction mechanism, and that interaction mechanism is best described in this kind of situation, and a smaller structure. Maybe we are not in a universe scale, we are on Earth scale. In that particular structure, Newtonian mechanics is sufficient. Newtonian mechanics can well describe this behavior, just what I have observed when I am examining with my ball pen with a sand pile. How the particle is moving, how the one particle is transferring the acceleration to the next particle, and next particle. So there are few problems. What problem? These blocks, sand particles, are very rigid. Sometimes it is very small in dimension. So maybe it is not deformable. It is not deformable, maybe. And there are some software, there are some toolbox that do not consider the deformability of the particle. But as a rock block or a rock something, it is deformable. So there are some limitations to cope up with the real simulation, real behavior of a rock assemblage, that we are basically simulating using a toolbox that considers the discreteness of a mixture. So these are the limitations. People have tried to sort out these limitations also in the days, and they have come up with a model. I am keeping this because I want to show this. You see the interaction. One particle on the above, below particle on the below, it is basically touching. Okay, there is no deformation. There is no deformation. Here on the second case, there is a deformation. One particle is deformed with the interaction of that particular particle. Another is, it is penetrated. It it is breaking to the next. So these three kind of situation is possible for a discrete behavior of rock. And people have tried and people have come up with a solution. So nowadays the problem of deformability is being solved. And nowadays this deformation now, when this rock or rock particle will interact now with the hydraulic or a pore water pressure or any fluid, it will form a membrane kind of thing, and that membrane is a continuous one. Okay, that membrane have elastic behavior. So now we are on a very confident side that we can simulate the behavior of assemblage of rock with the interaction of the fluid, because we have a finite element solution, we have a DM solution, and we can predict the behavior of the particle in this thing. So my conclusion of this lecture is, though conclusion will be later, conclusion out of this discrete element method is, it is a very potential candidate in the coming days to interpolate the behavior or predict the behavior of a complex rock structure. Okay. And here there is a important consideration that we come up often while solving a DEM solution. We have to consider a interaction coefficient. That interaction coefficient is normal stiffness and the tangential stiffness, okay, or another terminology used in different software. Principle is, you may ask that how to estimate the Kn and Kt. It is very difficult. Kn and K somewhere in another software, another toolbox. But principally, this is the, what can I say, the theoretical basis, foundation of the DEM. Based on that, it is working. So people are also trying to develop a laboratory scale model. From that, they can estimate the Kn and Kt. If I remember correctly, in the 2010 onwards, Imperial College of London and along with another university of Germany, there was a collaboration to develop this kind of lab, and that lab will try to simulate, because this is not observed in a real world scenario. This is not observed in a real world scenario between the interaction of the two particles. So they are trying to fabricate a lab, and from that lab they are trying to come out with a value of Kn and Kt. Okay. Though I was not aware of the final result of that particular project, but they have tried to do that. So I think in the coming days, lot of other methods will also come, because that was a very costly affair. That laboratory costing around few hundred crores, okay, in Indian rupee, and that was not affordable to Indian condition. So they are trying to, because what is the genuine driving force of this software? Because in a mining, you are on the abundance field of the geology, and that geology composed of lot of discontinuity, and considering lot of discontinuity and their influence on the structure, it is beyond the reach of the finite element solution or any continuum based solution to give a reasonable, correct answer of its responses under different external conditions. So this is one of the potential candidates that can give you a very approximate solution under what a structure is undergoing. Okay, so that is the potential candidate. That is why people are very much interested to find out the Ks and Kt so that we can get a very good solution, and already the deformability of the material is solved. So in my conclusion, I can tell you that discrete element method is a very potential candidate in the coming days, and it will outdate, particularly in the geomechanical structure, the finite element simulation, and it has a very lot prospect. So if I summarize my lecture, that I tried to tell you in between my lecture, that if you get a toolbox, some input you give, you will get some output, and that will not suffice your growth of the knowledge. Also, that will not suffice to the real need that you are doing. A thorough understanding of the numerical method is very essential. Okay, and nowadays, suppose you are today I was talking with Prithvi, your senior. He just passed this year 2021. He was telling me, sir, we got a unique opportunity that as a just junior batch of a mining engineer, we will start a mine itself, because the land acquisition was not there. So starting from land acquisition to the initial production, maybe down the line 5 years from now, 2021, production will start in 2026 maybe. Okay. So these many 5 years he will work scratch to the production. Now I was asking him that all the planning has been done. Yes sir, this has been done. What are the equipment will be deployed? Yes sir, it is done. How the transportation will be done? Yes sir, it is done. How it is done? The answer is, people have already done what will be done in the next 5 years using the numerical method. So that is not feasible now in the field to do now, but using the numerical simulation virtually, you have come out with a very good solution that these are the things will happen, and this way the production will come. So this is the strongest point of the numerical simulation. So should not be treated as Gaussian in and out. So we must find out the answer of our problem, not think that the software is only the answer. Okay. So remember, try to couple the experience of the geologist, of the engineer, with your output, so that your output is valuable. So in that sense, to start with, you can do some amount of laboratory modeling. That laboratory is available with you. Suppose you can do some testing that you are doing in a rock mechanics lab. Take that note in your notebook, exactly replicate that in your numerical model. That will be a very good way to start with the numerical model, because you know the result. And same thing, you try to summarize, interpolate, extrapolate, and the plot. Those are the behaviors, and you get exactly the result. That will give you the confidence. Yes, I am on the tentatively right side, that my modeling is actually giving the result. In that way, my suggestion will be, do some experiment. Maybe in your home, if you are not allowed to come into the campus, maybe in the home you do the experiment, get the result, and exactly reproduce that result in the numerical simulation, because that result is with you. So in that way, you can start learning the numerical methods, and there are a lot of things you can do in the later stage. But the starting point will be where from you will start. My suggestion will be, start from a physical experiment, reproduce that numerical in the numerical tool, and that will give you a lot of confidence, what to consider, what not to consider, so many things. So in a summary, I can tell you, this numerical modeling is not only a theory that we have to do with the practice. We have to gain the knowledge by practicing small problem, and by that slowly and slowly we have to advance and finally come out with a real problem that we will solve following the numerical method. So in the field is in this numerical method, field is developed by the scientists, different kind of scientists, basically mathematicians, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, computer engineers also contributed a lot. Okay, tool is ready. What we have to do? We have to understand this tool. We have to understand some real case scenario. We have to approximate that, put it into the toolbox, come out with the result, match with that, and compare, and fine tune it, and finally you will reach the solution. So this is all. Now I hand over to what's the person?
Balbir, sir.
Balbir.
Yes, sir.
So if there is questions, now I am ready to answer those questions.
Yes, sir. So, Avian, is there any questions you can ask from the sir? Unmute yourself and ask.
If anybody have any questions, please put it here. I will answer them.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Abhishek.
This is Abhishek, sir. Actually, I have visualized that portion, that discrete element method that you have told about that particles that they were conducting experiments, they were preparing the lab. Actually,
Yeah.
I cannot relate to that practical situation what you were explaining, sir. Can you please explain that, sir?
Okay. Very good. So, the Abhishek, your question is basically what we are trying to find out in that particular laboratory.
Exactly,
The
sir. Exactly.
Yeah. The problem in the discrete element method, all the discrete element methods, whatever we have seen till today, there is an important component. It is called stiffness coefficient, normal stiffness coefficient and shear stiffness coefficient. And this normal stiffness coefficient and the shear stiffness coefficient, that we are not actually relate with the real world scenario. Okay, but we have to give this parameter because based on that all the behavior is related. One problem was there that suppose two rock particle interacting with each other, how much normal stiffness would be, how much shear stiffness would be? There was no definite answer because from the different literature, people are considering different value. What people are doing as a back propagation, they used to conduct a test of those materials of a physical body and reproduce the result considering some value of Kn and Ks and try to match the profile of the stress strain behavior. Okay, and by that they trying to fine tune the Ks and Kn. But all these are back propagated. It is not a real value. So that laboratory is the project of the Imperial College of London, and the professor was, if I remember correctly, Professor Catherine O. Sullivan. Okay, he's a professor of civil engineering department. I know that very well because at that my PhD time I was in close contact with her. So they are doing a lab. That lab will try to predict a exact Kn and Ks value. In the figure I am trying to show to you, that we are representing that by a spring. Okay, spring in the normal direction, spring in the perpendicular direction. So perpendicular direction is the shear one, and this particular direction, contact to contact, is basically a normal one. So that spring coefficient we are taking as a coefficient of normal friction, like that. So that to predict in a real value, people have tried to develop a lab of that kind of facility, where they will consider the non-deformability of the material as well as the deformability of the material, and come out with the real result of a different kind of material, what the Ks and Kn value should be. So this was the purpose of that project. Is it clear?
I got the point, sir.
Okay. Now the next question is, how much constitutive model play a numerical model? Yes, that is a very important. I missed this particular part in my discussion very well. Okay. Constitutive model is a, what can I say? It is a middle point. It is a middle point between the output and the input in the software of any numerical based solution. This constitutive model try to model the elastic behavior as well as plastic behavior of the material. In my first curve, engineers are concerned with the elastic part only. Okay, dot portion, that is material is on the plastic domain, material is already broke. That we do not consider for a real modeling. For construction, because construction we cannot afford to have some failure. But some amount of plastic deformation for some rock, some body, some material, we can allow. Okay. So in a constitutive model try to relate the stress and strain relationship and its elastic and plastic behavior following a certain rule. Certain rule is, suppose I am giving stress. Okay, suppose I am giving for a ductile material. The material is taking load. Okay, and it has been shown that with that strain, material is become hard and hard and hard. That is strain hardening. So it is a one kind of constitutive criteria. Another, due to the strain, the material actually soften, and sometimes it basically reach to the so plastic stage that it is elongated. So it is a strain hardened softening model. There are Kampf-Clay models. So these are the outer periphery of this. But the most important that we use, that is the Mohr Coulomb. What Mohr Coulomb says? Long back in the 1770, Coulomb proposed a formula for the rock breakage, rock failure. Okay, and in 1902, Mohr have proposed another model, and clubbing together these two models is the Mohr Coulomb. And this Mohr Coulomb says us that if I plot the minor principal stress and my major principal stress on one axis, x-axis suppose, and I am increasingly plotting those curves, more circles on x-axis, that will tell us that on the outer periphery of those circles, if I join it by tangent, that will give a profile that in this direction material will fail. Okay, and the profile sometimes is a linear one, and most of the cases it is a non-linear one. Okay, so this behavior of the material is being captured by these constitutive criteria. Different kind of constitutive criteria developed by different scientists. There are, I think, if I am not wrong, more than 10 to 15 constitutive criteria are on active, is in use in different kind of material, for rock, for steel, for geomaterial, for clay, for sandstone, so many. So this constitutive criteria is basically being used for predicting what kind of failure it will exhibit during the external loading condition. Okay, so based on that is basically the software take a call on that, and based on that it's getting. The second question is made by Aurangzeb. What are the main numerical modeling software used in mining? There are so many numerical models are used in mining. If I know correctly, maybe you may also add if you know better than that. There is one software called GeoSlope, and GeoSlope is considered the LEM as well as FEM. There are SEED, Strand, Sigma, all are on a same basket. This is one by the GeoSlope. There is a software on the rock sign. One is Slide and another is Phase 2, or that is nowadays called RS software. It has been renamed as RS most probably, if I remember correctly. That also based on the FEM simulation. So this is rock sign, GeoSlope, done. There is a majority of the cases as the FEM simulation, ANSYS is being used. ANSYS with LS-DYNA for blast related behavior, dynamic behavior. Also Abacus is in use because Abacus considers good many number of constitutive criteria for rock and geomaterial type. Strand 7 are now also nowadays in use. And there are Ithaca company, they have a lot many softwares in their basket. FLAC, UDEC, 3DEC, FLAC 3D, PFC 3D. There are a software called Elfin. Elfin is a UK-based company. Elfin is a good candidate of hybrid FEM-DM. Elfin is a software. Is used for underground reservoir monitoring or kind of like that. Another software is nowadays we are using, it is Irazu by Geomechanical Incorporation of the Canada. These many softwares I know myself. Okay, maybe there are a lot of things. There are a lot more. Maybe I missed. So these many are sufficient, more than sufficient. Sir, you mentioned meshless models. Sir, in this method, meshing is not required. In this case, how? Yeah, yes, meshing is not at all required because I told you in the FEM simulation for a complex geometry, generation of the mesh is very difficult. To cope with this problem, there are meshless methods. Though I have not used any meshless method in my problem, but there are a lot many. So if you are interested, I can talk to you because I have not gone through in details of the meshless method, but people are in use. People are using this method for a very complex simulation in the domain of continuity, in the domain of continuous based model, FEM model. So this is my answer of these questions. If there are any questions I have missed, you can mention so that I can answer those questions. Balbir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, before I proceed, before I hand over to Balbir, tomorrow we will try to show you, because today I am trying to relate you with the theory. Theory means what is the relevance of the numerical methods in a mining engineering. You probably understood that nowadays with the classification, analytical solution, it cannot goes on like that. Only the solution is you have to adopt any numerical method. So tomorrow I will dedicate my whole session on a FLAC based model. Okay. Because I observed in mining department, people are using many people are using FLAC. So I thought it would be very much helpful for them how to use it, how to start with that, and how to go on solving a complex problem. So this is from my part. Balbir, you now take over.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for giving us time. Sir, there is one more question. Hello.
Tell me.
Yeah, from Simon Pandey.
Okay, if we want to use remote sensing data with the numerical method, how it can be done? Yes, it's a very important question. Just we got a big project on that. Exactly, it is not remote sensing, but it is basically real-time data. But remote sensing and the numerical model is already been done by many people. For example, there is a living problem in the Raniganj coalfield that both area, decold area, are not being filled. Okay, and due to that, there is a caving and subsidence is observed on the surface, and in the surface there are roads, and in the road crack develops. Okay, so if I use a very good remote sensing method and I get a মা তোমাকে পরে ফোন করছি, হ্যাঁ আমার একটা মিটিং আছে। So if I take a very good remote sensing data, suppose I consider a insert data, okay, insert data, SAR data, suppose. So the SAR data will be in the millimeter level accuracy, and I am modeling that machine, okay, where the subsidence is observed, ATM based or DM based, no problem. So remote sensing based data is being used as the input. Okay, remote sensing data is also used as a output to match, because in the output on the next flight of the journey of that particular flight we are taking another capture, that suppose on the 1 month time how much the deformation will be on that particular value, I can get a good result out of that remote sensing data and I can match it. So people are already use it, and many software is very much portable for importing the geometry from the remote sensing, because there are a lot of extension files, and if it is not, you can just import to AutoCAD, and from the AutoCAD as a DXF format or DWG format, DWG or DXF, you can remember correctly, my student knows better. So that can be easily importable in the software, and you do the numerical model and recheck again with the output on the next observation of the remote sensing model. So in that way, coupling of the remote sensing data and modeling of the numerical simulation using any simulation is possible. But the new challenge, as Ms. Professor Jing has been envisioned in his 1990 paper, that real-time monitoring is also possible and real-time simulation is also possible, and based on that you recheck and re-verify, retune your model, and that is also we are now going to do that. Okay, so that we will do for one mine in Eastern Coalfield Limited in the coming days. So let's see how much accurate we will be with the real-time simulation, and that is a new area people are trying to work on. There was no feasible result yet, because no one has tried yet. We are the first group, we are starting. So we hope that we can pretty well match that real-time monitoring with the sensor-based network with the numerical model. Shivam, do my answer suffice to your question?
Yes, sir.
Any more question?
No, sir.
Balveer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you take.
I think, sir, there's no questions from us.
I don't think there are any more questions. Balbir, you can conclude.
Yeah.
It's sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining and having this meeting, and thank you for everyone being connected till now. I hope this works will create some more values. And now I am ending this meeting.
Thank you, Balbir. Thank you, all of you, for your interactive questions.
Thank you, sir.
Very much we are hopeful that tomorrow again we have a good session on this particular topic.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Goodbye and good night. Stay safe. Take care of your health.